Hello, everyone. It's Carolyn Moor, and we are here with the Healthy Widow, Healthy Woman podcast. And we have a special guest today, a woman after my heart. She is the facilitator for our Modern Widows Club, Parenting Club. And if you've never known that we have a parenting club, you're in for a treat because Michelle Walker has taught me so much as a parent who had lost my spouse and raised my daughters. I wish I would have had Michelle and everything she's doing with this parenting club when I was a young mother. So welcome, Michelle, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. It's a pleasure to speak to you today and brag about the Parenting Club.
Right? It's and now the parenting club was born really out of a lot of our data that we discovered we had so many parents. I mean, with the average age of a widow being 59, I was a 37-year-old widow with a 2 and 4-year-old. It was very hard to find not just support for my children, which I did, extremely harder to find support from myself as a bereaved parent or a surviving parent or a widowed parent, as you have taught me to say.
Absolutely. I too was widowed fairly young. I was 40 years old, and our daughters were just 7 and 9. And there is very little out there for that, or at the time, there was very little out there for those kinds of situations. Um, it's not uncommon to be a young widowed parent, but it's not common enough that there are services or groups of people gathering together to support one another. So, fortunately, things can be done virtually now, and that's what the Parenting Club is taking advantage of, the ability to deliver those services or those support far and wide.
That's right. And with what you have been able to teach me just because from your experience, it's so interesting to have a personal experience, but then actually look at it from a broader demographic of a large group of women who are actually raising children solo. I even remember when I was on TLC on Shalom and Home, of the 20 episodes, only one show was a solo parent raising kids. So even in that experience for me, I went, gosh, this is how can I relate, to parenting articles, because I felt like it was exponentially more challenging being a solo parent. And what I love that you do is ultimately, bottom line, reducing parental distress and increased parent functioning is the goal of everything you do. And so share a little bit about actually what's the format? Like how often do you have meetings, and what usually happens at Parenting Club?
Sure. Well, the Parenting Club focus on reducing parental distress came from something that I learned when I took a master's program. After raising my children, I wanted to find a way to be a peer supporter to widowed parents like myself. This all is born of my own desire to bring women together to support each other. And my original focus was on peer support. But then when I started my master's program, Family and Human Development in 2022, I learned that peer support was part of it, but there were a whole lot of other factors that were helpful to a family in adapting to loss, because you don't get over a loss. The family, the parent, the child, everyone has a lot of adapting to do. And the number one protective factor, protective meaning helping provide for the best possible outcomes, the number one protective factor is the surviving parent herself, which sounds like an intimidating job, but at the same time, it can be a very empowering thing too, to know that, yes, this thing that has happened to my child, every parent's first question is my child going to be okay? Every parent worries about that. And the good news is the parent has such a big role to play in helping that child adapt. So, but it creates a conundrum, because just as the child needs extra parenting from their parent, the surviving parent is facing her own grief. She's facing all of the demands of becoming the sole provider, the sole caregiver, the sole parent in the family. And then the children are grieving. So it's kind of a situation where just when you need super mom is actually had her functioning level challenged. And oftentimes the parenting functioning level can be reduced by all of these demands. So anything that can be done to increase mom's confidence, increase her information base about, some things that can be helpful, and just increase her confidence level in what she's doing. All of that can help reduce her distress and, by extension, increase her functioning level and be the kind of parent that the child needs to be able to adapt, because children are incredibly resilient and incredibly adaptable. But there are some things that can be helpful.
It's really so true. I remember thinking, if I do not get the support that I need, how can I be the role model I need to be for my daughters? And I was quietly, silently suffering deeply. There was almost impossible to even have a therapist grasp the intensity of what I was feeling, because I knew that this was long term. I knew that my grief was going to be lifelong, and I also knew my children's grief was going to be lifelong. And whatever the transitions were in their life, like graduating from high school, going to college, getting married, those things have now happened over the last 25 years. And I knew that coming into those, that I had to become a little bit of an expert in how to get through grief, because I would be leading them as minors, for so long. And you too. And we have so many of our ladies that the research that we do, confidence, widowhood is a confidence buster. But I think it's
Absolutely.
double more so for when you're actually parenting, because the responsibility is is very heavy on their shoulders. Um,
It's a big responsibility, and children are not developmentally in a position to provide the reassurance that the
mm,
partner used to provide. Parenting in and of itself, even in an intact two-parent family, is a big job. It's a really big job. And hopefully mom and dad are, patting each other on the back saying, you got this. Well, when you lose your partner, you lose that reassurance, and you have kids who it's really not their job to be providing that. Now, some kids are more generous in saying thanks, mom, than other kids, but that's really developmentally not what they're called to do.
mhm.
So it's mom who has to find ways to shore up her own confidence and take care of herself to become more confident in her role. And that's what the Parenting Club does its best to deliver: information, peer support, and just I like to think of myself as an encourager, because I truly love these moms and I feel so, my heart goes out for what everyone is being called to do. At the same time, my heart knows that they are exactly what their child needs. And so I want
Yeah.
to help them believe that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I actually didn't have that encouragement. I had a lot of judgment.
Very
But
common.
I didn't have the encouragement, but I myself became my greatest encourager, saying, no one knows the children better than you do. No one knows better how your husband wanted these children to be raised, right? And
Mhm.
so that was very reassuring to me, and I just had to decide what that was. I love what you do with Parenting Club, because you kind of fall in two different, really pivotal areas for parents, and that is social support. You're creating those peer support sessions, but then at the same time, it's parent education. It's almost like basic survival parent education, which is a new concept in the world of bereavement care. And women find us at Modern Widows Club most of the time when they're coming out of grief and bereavement programs. So it's a natural bridge to then step into this world and start talking about the challenges and what I need to learn. But the value is not just you actually guiding them, it's all of you in the community that's providing education, because it's lived experience, right?
Absolutely. There is such power and comfort and reassurance to be found in knowing that you are not alone with your experience. I recently held a Zoom session and a mom chimed in with a scenario, an area of concern. And as soon as she finished saying that, another mom said, "You are speaking my life." And so just that not feeling so alone. Am I the only one going through this? Am I the only one having a hard time with this? That is extremely comforting and empowering and reassuring. And so that part of what the parenting club is what a researcher would call it, or a social scientist would call it, social support. You know, you're not alone
Mhm.
in the forest. You have a tribe of people around you, that people that get it. Now, to widowed parents, it's just people who get it, because the most caring friend, our own mothers, often strangers on the street, people have lots of opinions, but really, most of them don't get it because it's not a road that they've ever walked. And so, being
Mhm.
with people who get it, being part of the club that nobody wants to be part of, but really benefits from being, finding others who are in it if our circumstances allow, that is a big part of it. So, that's the peer support, of the social support part of what the parenting club offers.
Yeah.
Um, and that is delivered through a couple of different ways. We have regular monthly Zoom meetings. And not surprisingly, it's hard to find a time when busy parents are all available. So we have one that's offered on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, which is the earlier, and another is also on a Tuesday at 7. But we're in the process right now of going through a survey, and I'm gathering as many data points as I can to find out when is an optimal time for people, because we serve widows in all of the US time zones and some international ones. And so it's a little tricky, but I want to find a time that works for people to come together, because of everything we do, finding community is probably the single most powerful source of support for a woman. So there's that. There are special events. We do book discussions, which is a little bit of a hybrid of education and peer support. We have some special topic Zoom sessions or webinars, age specific. We recently held one for teens, focused on their teen years. Um, and then we have some parent travel opportunities too. We did a cruise last summer. We have a family weekend in San Diego scheduled for this summer. And then later in the year, and this is one of our cruise alumni from last summer, suggested a New Year's Eve cruise for the 2025-26 transition. So those are on the calendar right now for ways for people to come together and just be with others who get it. The Travel Club of Modern Widows knows the combination of having fun with traveling and being with people who get it is just incredibly healing and incredibly fun.
Yeah,
And
I've loved that the merge of these two resources that we have seen the ability to be able to merge and even expand on each other. I mean, they
Mhm.
both just highlight one another so well.
One of the things that can happen in a bereaved family, because the term that the social scientists use is parentally bereaved families. So they're a family who has lost a parent and they're all in a bereaved state from that. But it's important to really shore up family bonds and show the kids and show everyone that the family, even without the parent, without the parent who's passed, that the family is still a source of love, still a source of fun, still a place where bonds can be tight and strong, that it's still a family. Some people wonder if there's still a family. And so a family travel experience can be an incredible way to have fun, build bonds, and be with people who get it. The children can meet other children who've lost a parent. Moms can meet other moms. It's a family travel is an especially good way of bringing a lot of different aspects of healing together.
It's in just the social support on its own without having to, what we always say, lead with the story.
Yeah.
We're constantly having to tell the story, and that is the exhausting part of grief. And so when you actually know that you're merging with other families, that there's not going to be that huge, long, awkward moment where you have to say, my dad died, or, my husband died, and just it's it sets a tone. And in this instance, you're coming with the understanding that we all are on that level field of, we all know grief. And now let's look in the ways that we can grow. I just think it's so beautiful. I
Absolutely.
wish there was more of this in the world, because this is, I think, honestly, where a lot of the healing happens in this.
Peer relationships are so healing and so empowering, and being being seen for our experience and respected for our experience and accepted, not judged, not, minimized. That is just an incredible part of the human experience that leads to growth. I mean, it is through that the person has the confidence to then grow into whatever the next chapter will bring.
And what you're doing, and even myself in founding Modern Widows Club, the movement for widow care, is really creating this platform where these families and individuals are being heard on a larger scale, so that we can understand that research is important, that studies are important, that this is public health at the highest level. This is community health at the highest level. We simply cannot stop at caring for children in their grief, because when these children who get the support go home to parents who lack support, how in the world can we expect these parents to uh, have optimal health themselves and then steer their family in that direction? I see what's happening here, a dream come true for what I so deeply desired, 25 years ago. And it tears me up to think about it, because there's going to be a whole generation of people that this organization and what you're doing, touching people, that will be changed forever, and it will ripple out into their children and their children and on and on. And I know you agree with me, because we talk about these things a lot. I want to ask you about that parentally bereaved. That's a mouthful right there. Is that what we call ourselves?
Well, in my master's program, I'm like, okay, this is what I want. Now, I was surprised no class touched on grief or parent loss. Family and human development was the program, and not a single person in my cohort was dealing with parental death. So I was an island, but that's okay. I'm okay being an island. So off I go to do my research. And there's widowhood, there's grieving parents, there's grieving children. And oftentimes I would find a research article that dealt with something different, a different situation. And I came to find out that what the the family who has one parent die while the children are still being raised is what is called a parentally bereaved family. So they are grieving the death of a parent. So that entails a surviving spouse grieving the loss of a partner, and there are men who have this situation as well as women. And then there are the children who are still developing. And children develop well into their 20s. It is a common misconception that, oh, they're teens, oh, they're 18, oh, they're 20, they're fine, they don't need anything. That is not true. My own children were 7 and 9, and they are now 27 and 29. They both just had birthdays. And it's not as front and center. It's definitely not the same as it used to be. But the grief doesn't go away for children. That's the thing that people don't realize is grief is a living, breathing part of a child's entire life. And supporting that child is therefore a task of mom. I have a very, very wise mom. She is not a widow, but she is a very wise mom who, when this happened, was all about doing whatever she could do to support me. I was so blessed to have such a supportive mom and dad so close by. And she said over and over, if you do not take care of the mother, she cannot take care of the children. And that was something that was ingrained in me from very early on. She saw that. She did so much to provide that, both my mom and dad. And so um, this is a way to pay it forward.
It really is. And I will say there are many, many pitfalls for parents. There have been after having met tens of thousands of widows and many of them parents in all different ages, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, some of the moms are struggling with substance abuse. Some of the moms are struggling with almost starving themselves. Some of the widows they're entering into risky or new relationships. This is going to impact the family in so many ways. And I just thought, man, if I someday can participate in any way in just raising awareness and creating solutions to this, something different to attach to,
Mhm,
attachment problem happens, which is what widowhood is on a
mhm,
very large scale. We did not want to be separated, and now we are, and it's not just us, and it's our entire family. Um,
mhm,
I think what is happening here is really creating an extremely new paradigm going forward. My mom was widowed. My mom was widowed at 52 when I was 37. My
mhm.
mom had no idea how to help me because she herself didn't have any help. So being a generational healing modality, which is what you're doing, is you're breaking this chain of a dysfunctional future family. You're actually creating healthier families who, to be quite honest with you, have almost every right to not function because of the disruption it is in the sort of, I guess, normal idea of what a healthy family would look like. And yet, you, me, many women who go and seek out the support that they need, in your case, education, in my case, education, and starting a nonprofit, um, we create those conversations. We change the narrative of what it is. Using that word, parentally bereaved family, I I've never heard that, and I was on a board of a children's grieving center for 12 years, right? So I love that you gave that an actual name to say, and why I asked you about it. Um, that was kind of my introduction in bereaved, parentally bereaved family. I saw the need to support the organization that was helping my children, but I also was there to rally and advocate for what's next. How do we help the hundreds, thousands of parentally bereaved leaders of families? How
Yeah, that's what they're doing. Exactly.
do we help those women? Because that to me is the greatest return on investment right there.
Well, it's a long game. So it is a long game because even when the initial acute grief subsides, and by and large, it does subside to a degree, it does not go away. And children, part of the child's grief experience is that as they reach a new developmental stage or a life milestone, they will reprocess their grief. They will look at or consider what happened in their life through their new, more mature lens. And they will have questions. They may regrieve. They may regress a little bit. Loss of a parent creates instability and fear for a child. Children explore the world from a place of safety. So they have to have a safe base, and then they wander out and explore the world. And then when they feel a little like, uh-oh, I've gone too far, they come back to that safe base. Well, when the safe base doesn't feel stable, they can sort of tend to not really develop and process. So you want to have a mom who's expecting, okay, like it isn't necessarily a bad thing when my child regrieves. This is normal. This is part of what is going to happen. And so this a little bit segues into the other part. So we had the peer support component of what the parenting club does. But the other part of it is widowed parent education about some things that I did not know. I learned these things when I was going through the master's program, and I thought, well, shoot, I could have used this a long time ago, because there are actually some specific things that can be helpful to creating the right kind of environment for adaptation, to helping confidence for the parent. Because if the parent feels confident and competent in her role, there may be less of a likelihood to run out and make a decision that, will maybe harm the family or create further disruption in the family. So um, the components of the parent education, I'll just tick through them briefly. First and foremost, the very foundation of it all is self-care for mom, self-compassion, literal physical self-care, keeping her needs on the radar. Sometimes we do what mom does. Sometimes mom does what she needs to do, and you go to a babysitter. Like, that is the foundation. If mom doesn't take care of herself, if she doesn't fill her bucket, there is nothing to pour from. Or, worst case, she will get tired and burned out, and her functioning level will be reduced, and she won't be showing up as the kind of parent. So we aren't always at our best, but we want to keep our best, as high as we can by taking care of ourselves. So I really am constantly emphasizing self-care, self-care, self-care. There is building family bonds. So I mentioned earlier that family bonds can be frayed by the stresses of the loss, the grief, the changes that come into the family. Sometimes families have to move. Extended family relationships can change, and all of a sudden grandma and grandpa are treating us differently than they used to, or mom doesn't want to go see this cousin, this uncle anymore. Like, things can change, bonds gets frayed. And so shoring up those family bonds, really intentionally taking time to do fun things as a family, strictly for the purpose of doing something fun as a family and shoring up those bonds. So that's part of it. A big component is understanding children's grief at all the different ages, because it shows up differently. It changes. Teenagers are particularly tricky because they look like they're little adults and they want to act like they're little adults, but really inside they are children who are just starting on a big transition. That transition from childhood to fully independent adulthood is a big, scary journey for a child. Not that they would let anyone see that, but it is. And so they need support. Even young adults are navigating independence without a role model, without a guide. And yes, they are actually legally adults, but they're kind of like what I think of as baby adults. They are that toddler who's trying to walk down the stairs or up the stairs, but they're new at it and they're going to stumble. They're going to make mistakes. They don't have fully developed skills as adults. And so at all the ages, they need support in their grief, because it does crop up at different ages. So a part of this is also discipline. People, myself included, this is probably one of my failings. You think, oh, my kids have been through so much, how can I discipline my child? The truth is that discipline provides children with an important sense of security. And so effective, positive discipline tactics, discipline can actually be a time for communicating and teaching and even shoring up of bonds, which seems a little counterintuitive, but mostly it provides a child with an important sense of security, knowing that, I like to think of it or use the analogy of driving along a winding road on the coast. I live in California, and if you have a guardrail, it's not as scary to drive that cliff as if you don't have a guardrail. And so discipline, effective discipline and positive discipline. There's, you don't want to be the strong arm just because I said so disciplinary. And you want to have communication about the boundaries that you put on your kids. But that's a really important source of building a child's security. And when kids have discipline, it's less stressful for mom, so it reduces the distress on her when children understand the boundaries and over time learn to self-regulate.
You know, that's important to build trust. I trust in you. You are the adult of this family.
Mhm.
I remember having moments like that with my daughters, and I'm like, that's actually not something you need to worry about. Here's something that you can do in your life, but that's my job as the adult in this family and the leader of our family. I would say those things so that they were reassured. You have your job, I have my job. You don't have to worry about it. I'm taking care of that. So that created the security and the confidence in the person in charge. And then
Ex-
I went and figured out what I needed to do because I maybe didn't know at the time.
There's a lot of faking it till you make it when you're a widowed parent, and that's okay. And but children need to be given permission to stay children. They don't need to worry about the financial resources in the family. They don't need to be worrying about the adult problems. That's mom's job to find another adult to help with those sorts of things. Children get to be children. And that helps to offset some of those terrible, things that people say, oh, well, you're the man of the house now, Johnny. You take care of your mom. That is not what Johnny needs to hear. That is absolutely not what needs to happen. That can cause a lot of stress for the poor little boy, or the little girl who's tasked with taking care of mom. No, mom can take care of mom. You can be taken care of by mom. And that's such an important message that children need to get.
It really is. And I'm actually writing a future article in Widow Life about learned helplessness and about this scenario because that can happen very easily in a parenting situation. Like they see the parent in that behavior and then it gets transferred to the child, right? And so that's why the confidence building and the education and the awareness and the knowledge and the support all together is like this cocktail of that's beneficial. And so,
Yes.
and that's parenting club like in a nutshell.
Children need to hear, we will get through this together. Now, mom might be feeling, I don't see a path, and that's okay. That was certainly how I felt. I didn't see how we were going to go forward, but I did come to believe we'll figure this out. We will figure this out. I will take care of you, and we will be okay. Particularly for younger children, but even for some of the older children, they're like, yikes, like this thing just happened that never was expected to happen. And is the world, has the world spun off its axis? It's very, very disorienting and scary. And so knowing that there is still that secure base, even if mom has to, at moments she's going to be faking it till she makes it. That is part of the experience. That's not for the child to worry about. That's for mom to seek support. And that's what I want the parenting club to be, is a reliable place over the long run for support, even as the needs ebb and flow and okay, things are fine. And then whoops, we started high school and things are coming up. The parenting club is there for people when they need it, how they need it.
And long-term haul. I always
Yeah,
say
yeah.
the solutions for the crisis in which widows find themselves in. So let's just call it what it is. It is a crisis. Is first acute, then it's short, and then it's long term. Bereavement care and grief support is that sort of acute care, right? But as they're going into the short term, that has gotten a little bit less identifiable, and long term is not even on the radar for most healthcare systems or support systems. That's what we're creating. We're creating that bridge literally brick by brick. Um, I I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but I actually went and looked in some of our data bank, and we had asked a question on a survey. If you had to name one thing that has been the hardest being a widow with minor children, what would you say it is? And I'm just going to say a few of these here, because this is seriously the voices of thousands, probably millions of widows recognize these comments. Doing everything alone, being spread too thin. That I have to be both parents now. Staying strong for my family. Making all the guilt. I need time to grieve, but they need me to be strong, and I worry that I'm going to mess them up. The teenager roller coaster is impossible. And seeing them mourn. Seeing my son in so much pain after losing his dad and best friend. And there's 6 pages of that.
I believe it. I felt that my experience, I felt that I hurt more for my children than I did for myself. And I still hurt for my children. We're coming up on 20 years later this year since my husband's death. And my children are wonderful. They're thriving young adults. And not so young anymore, I guess, but they're thriving. And I still hurt for the fact that their father's not here to see them and their lives and help them navigate, some of the adult decisions, evaluating a partner, making career decisions, trying to choose a vehicle, like all of these things that were his unique talents and gifts, and only he could give his point of view. They're still missing that. And so that concern for children at the top of a widow's mind who has children is I can relate to that so much. And I believe every word you said. I'm sure that there are hundreds of thousands of people that agree with every single statement.
Absolutely. Every word that I just said is going to really resonate with all of our listeners in this podcast. And, really understanding your help and helping me understand the broader perspective, and also these surveys, and really what the honor that we hold in having this information, right? And it really made me start to look at different things. And this year, we're actually going to be at NACG, which is the National Alliance for Children's Grief Symposium. And we have never had a booth where the focus is mainly on children, but it makes sense for us to be there now with this parenting resource, because every children's grief center, the hundreds and hundreds of them that are around the country, they have mothers coming there that are the women who would want to know about our resource and to be able to be a part of this. And you're going to be there, and I'm going to be there. And I'm just so excited because I know that you're speaking, you'll be on stage with actually one of your mentors and professors, and you can share a little bit about that and what you're going to be doing at NACG, as well as being at our booth. So if you're listening to this and you're at the conference from June 3rd to the 6th in Kansas City, Missouri, come and see us. But Michelle is there partially representing Modern Widows Club and the Parenting Club, but they're to learn to become even better a facilitator.
So my impetus for going to the conference, even before I learned about Modern Widows having a booth, was because of a relationship that I have that is dear to my heart with Arizona State University's Reach Department. There is a resilient parenting program. And this is something I learned about through my master's program, and my initial relationship with the Reach, with the resilient parenting researchers, happened at that time when their program was delivered through a few in-person agencies. And I wasn't able to make the connection to go to any of these agencies. Geographically, there was nothing in my area. But in the process, I learned that they were developing an online version of their resilient parenting for bereaved families.
Mm.
And this is a program that when I learned about it, even in its original form, I was like, oh my gosh, where was this 20 years ago? I needed this program. And so it was such an honor for me when I was able to make contact with the research team, in particular, Dr. Erwin Sandler, who is the lead researcher, and he's devoted his career to studying resilience in families. And I was invited by them to become part of their inaugural group of coaches. They have developed an online presentation of their curriculum, which it's 10 units of material, short half-hour units, that as a coach, a trained coach for this, I check in with the caregivers and parents every 2 weeks just to talk to them about what they're doing, how these parenting tools, these are practical tools that they can put to use right away with their children, um, and work with them as they go through the program. So I am going to NACG. Originally, I thought, oh, I can meet the Arizona State University team. Well, Dr. Sandler asked me to speak as part of his symposium presentation and give some remarks about my experience as a coach. And I'm very excited to be working with him and a couple of the other members of the research team. I'll be up with them talking about this program that I just love, and I'm excited to help get it out into the world to reach as many parents with grieving children as possible, because these
Right.
tools are very powerful.
They
So,
really are. I mean, resilient parenting, that pretty much says it all. I mean, they named it the correct thing.
mhm,
And
yeah.
for those of you who don't know what NACG is, because I mean, children's grief is, I didn't know nothing about children's grief until my children were grieving. It's the only professional member organization specifically addressing issues about childhood and family bereavement. Modern Widows Club, the Movement for Widow Care, is actually a nonprofit member of NACG, and this is why we're going to be at the symposium this year. Dr. Sandler and I were chosen to be on the Bereavement Support Advisory Council for the New York Life Foundation, which is also sponsoring this event. So we're going to get to meet for the first time being on this advisory council, and you already knew him. I mean, it's so interconnected, this world of parentally bereaved family support to create resilience. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is we want families to thrive. We want families to flourish. Ultimately, that's what we all want, because the the loss has created such an impact for every member in the family. And then you're also doing something like a little you're doing a poster, which we'll have flyers at our booth that explain this poster, that it's your idea to come up with.
Well, so one part of the, besides the breakout sessions at the conference, at the symposium, and the exhibition booths, there's also a poster session that will be held on one of the days. And I created a academic research poster to summarize my capstone project from my master's program. The culmination of my program was not a thesis, it was a capstone application project. And I took all of the research, every project that I had throughout my program, I focused on children's grief and bereaved families and what was helpful, what needed to happen to support those families. And I created essentially a literature review that found that there were 4 different opportunities to help these families. There was peer support is helpful. There's evidence that virtual programs are effective. So this could be done virtually. It didn't have to be in person. There is evidence that there are what is called ideal family conditions that you want to help generate
The
these
BFC.
conditions. Yeah, these beneficial family conditions. Not all of them are within the scope of parent education, but good parent-child communication. That's within the scope of parent education. Listening to your children, that's within the scope of parent education. So some of those family conditions can be fostered through parent education. And last but not least, understanding children's grief. That is a biggie. If parents understand what happens through children's grief and how it might show up, and then how it might go away or seem to be away, but then it crops up again, they can be better prepared and less alarmed, and less, distressed when it does show up, because chances are it is going to cycle in and out. Chances are it's not going to come out as I'm mourning the death of my father and I'm feeling frustrated, and that's how it is. It's going to come out as behaviors. And so
Mhm.
helping parents understand and learn to work with that and help them give their children tools to express their grief and understand that expression might not be words, it might be actions or art or sport. That all of that is part of what is shown to help. So taking those four opportunities for intervention, I thought to create the two pathways that we discussed earlier, peer support and parent education. And so
It so makes sense. And when you actually put it in the graphic, it really creates a pathway for people to understand not just their role as a parent, but the family's role as a whole. I loved what you did, and it is such a critical part of their role. And because honestly, it's as a parent being so busy and overwhelmed and exhausted and really waking up and never feel like I'm ever ahead. I mean, that feeling and going, I think I'm going to have so many more years of this. How am I going to do that? I just remember thinking, one day at a time, like, and affirm myself at the end of the day, you made it another day. And this is what is like for our parents. So I am so excited that you identified those four factors that really have shown to support healthy adaptation following a loss. Because this is Healthy Widow, Healthy Woman, podcast. The reason why we named it that is because we want we want women to understand there is something called a healthy widowhood pathway, and there is also something called becoming a healthy woman, a healthy parent, a healthy human being in the world. And that's what all of our programs represent. And this one, I think, is the most primal, wanting to be a flourishing parent for a child, that we cannot stop their grief. We can only be a mirror in how we adapt to ours so that they can adapt to theirs. And it is so vitally important. So I get to see you in person in a few weeks, and I'm so excited, Michelle, that we got to have this conversation. And we will put the links here for the parenting club for you if you're a parent and you want to learn more from Michelle, because boy, this is just the tip of the iceberg right here.
I would love to welcome people into the Facebook group. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out that is got information about gathering opportunities. We have trips in there. We have our survey for people to chime in on what time works for virtual meetings. We have book discussions are in the newsletter. And then we always link to articles and resources that will help support the role of widowed parenting, supporting the mom so that she can take better care of her children. That's what this is all about. So
It's really one-stop shop. I mean, honestly, it's the best resource that more people really need to know about. And that's our hope when we go to NACG, that we will walk away from there and hundreds of new centers and people will actually know about this resource. So I just want to thank you, Michelle, for being on the podcast today, and for seriously the heart that you have for this. It's a dream come true to have someone as knowledgeable and as compassionate and walks the walk and talks the talk, and is such a great role model for all the women in our community.
been a pleasure to talk to you today, Carolyn, and I can't wait to see you and everyone in Kansas City.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for listening to Healthy Widow, Healthy Woman podcast today, and we hope you enjoyed this content-rich information, because that's what we strive for here. We want every family flourishing, and that's our mission.